All right, so good afternoon. I want to welcome you guys to our student internship program legal panel. This is one of the industry panels along with healthcare, engineering, environmental and life science, all healthcare, all of the different industries that you guys have had a main interest in. We are trying to incorporate those into panels to give you guys a chance to hear from professionals within those industries, learn about the different paths they've taken, learn about the different ways that their career fits within that industry, that it might not be something that you were 100% familiar with. And so today I'm excited to have a panel of professionals from the legal field. And they are here to kind of share about the work that they do, answer your questions. Since we have a small group, you guys can obviously continue to use the chat feature for your questions. Or again, since we have a small one, you can just unmute yourself. But with that, I would like to have our panel introduce themselves to get us started. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Elaine Roberts first to get us started in introductions.
Good afternoon. So glad to be here for this panel and to talk to you about the legal profession. My name is Elaine Roberts, and I'm the Executive Director of the Dispute Resolution Center of Montgomery County, Inc. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. I am an attorney and I'm also a professional mediator. And what I do in terms of the Dispute Resolution Center is we have a small volunteer-driven agency which provides mediation services and training in Montgomery County area. And mediation, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, is an alternative or supplement to litigation. It's a process where a third-party neutral assists individuals who are in conflict to either resolve their dispute or to improve their communications if they can't resolve it. It's a private and confidential process that gives people the opportunity, even if they're in court, to resolve it earlier without the necessity of having to have their business in the public domain. And it also gives them an opportunity to be creative and reach an agreement that meets their needs. So with that in mind, I'll go ahead and turn it over to the next panel.
Hi, my name is Kristen Bates. I am an attorney at the Strong firm located in the Woodlands, Texas. I am a senior associate attorney here. I originally am from Brenham, Texas, and for undergraduate, I went to Texas A&M University where I studied communication. And after Texas A&M, I moved to Houston where I attended the University of Houston Law Center. When I graduated, I worked in downtown Houston for about 7 years before relocating to the Woodlands, Texas. My practice as an attorney revolves mainly around civil litigation. So I represent companies and individuals in court lawsuits, not generally including criminal or family law. I also work with companies and businesses and just individuals with regards to business matters, business dealings, and real estate matters. I'm also a certified mediator.
I think I was next, right, Corinne? Okay. Hi, I'm James Stillwell, and so probably Kristen and Elaine would kick me if we were in the same room because I exited a mediation to have my associate step in for me so that I could talk to y'all today. It's only a $10 million case, so no biggie. I am the managing partner of a law firm that I founded in the Woodlands. It's called Stillwell, Earl, and Apostolakis. Managing partner means that I am both an owner and I practice law, but I also manage the business of our business. So I'm the business manager in addition to being attorney. For education, I graduated Springwoods High School on the west side of Houston. From there, I went to Baylor University and I studied political science and economics in a double degree. Went to the University of Texas Law School in Austin, and then graduated from there in 1995 and had my first job with a small law firm in the Woodlands. So in the past 27 years, I've had 5 different law firm jobs across the way. For the kind of law that I practice, I'm a civil trial lawyer. I also do, so in that civil trial law, quite a few business disputes, but I also do real estate trial law and real estate drafting work. So buying and selling real estate and things associated with it. And then also wills, estates, trusts, and probate work. So you could say I'm a trial, dirt, and dead people lawyer.
All right. My name is Rachel, and I am in a different sector of law than the other ones. So I'm on the criminal side of things. And I'm a prosecutor right now. I grew up in College Station, and I was on the debate team in high school. I got a scholarship to do debate in college. So I went to Texas State in San Marcos. And so from there, I then went to law school at St. Mary's Law School in San Antonio. I've been a prosecutor my whole career. I've done, so that's criminal. That's like if dealing with the criminal justice system. I've done like all the normal types of prosecution at the Harris County DA's office. But right now I'm a special prosecutor for the state of Texas, and I actually deal with cases that involve TDCJ, the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, so the prisons in Texas. And so I will prosecute officers that use excessive force, or they violate civil rights of inmates, or inmates who get involved in criminal matters as well. And so I work from home a lot because I work for the state. And so that is a plus side to this particular job that I have right now. So yeah, that's what I do.
Great, thank you guys.
Corinne, I didn't tell about my background. If
Go
you
for it.
want me to, I can go ahead and supplement with that.
Yeah.
I'm new to the panel, so I didn't quite get with the full program when I got started. But I am originally from Louisiana. I attended the University of Southwestern Louisiana, where I got a secondary education degree. My major was in history. My minor was in sociology. With sort of having in the back of my mind that I might want to go to law school, but was not totally convinced that I wanted to make the financial or the time investment. So when I was living in Ohio, after we had been transferred there, I got a paralegal certificate to see if I liked the law. And I did that for approximately 3 years with a maritime and admiralty firm. I went into law school convinced that I was going to go back into admiralty and maritime law, but absolutely fell in love with disability related civil rights issues, Americans with Disabilities Act, special education law, employment related matters, that type of thing. So following law school, some friends and I got a building and started up individual practices. Although we were solo practitioners, we supported each other and sort of made one firm type, one-stop firm practice where you could get employment law or different types of legal assistance. Following that, I was recruited by a disability rights nonprofit where I became a regional managing attorney covering about 30 counties in Texas and East Texas. From there, I went to a mid-sized boutique law firm in the Galleria, where I did employment law, special education law, and opened up their disability type practices. Following that, I was recruited back to the nonprofit, where I became the managing attorney for the entire state. I ran 14 offices for them in terms of disability rights practice. I've served as a mediator throughout all of this time, both as a volunteer opportunity. I volunteered at the Harris County Dispute Resolution Center, both as a mediator and a board member. And then I've also served with a couple of other nonprofits as a managing attorney, and I ran Mayor Anise Parker's disability rights office called the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities, where we serve the 200,000 individuals in Houston who have disabilities. And then when we moved to the Woodlands area, I started working at the Dispute Resolution Center approximately 8 years ago. So you can see with a law degree, there's a lot of flexibility, and it gives you a lot of opportunity to work in different industries, which I've done.
So with that, I know that in some of our other, on the other legal panels, we've talked about how there's not like a specific undergrad major that you have to do in order to go to law school. And some of you touched on, or all of you touched on what it was that you studied, but what was it that made you decide that's the route of law? I don't know if I'm using the right term, or that's the, like, it's not a field, but sector of the legal field that you were interested in and wanted to work in. Did something happen, or was it you really enjoyed this one class, or if you guys can kind of touch on that, because I don't know students have asked that in the past, is how do you decide? Because there are, I've never heard of maritime. I never heard, that makes sense, but what was your moment?
For me, having a history degree got me interested in the law because I saw how law influenced everything. It plays such a big part in society. So it seemed to be intriguing, something that you could make a difference in the world. Maritime and admiralty law was very exciting. It's big in this area because of the oil fields. That maritime and admiralty law covers that. But we also did things like seizing ships and actually going out onto the ships in the middle of the night and seizing them and negotiating with crews from all around the world. So that was very interesting. The thing in law school that really got me interested in disability issues, though, it was sort of two different things impacted me. I had a nephew who was born with a disability. And so for my family, I began doing more and more research about laws that protected and applied to people with disabilities. So it was a very interesting topic, personally interesting topic. I also got a taste of being in an area of law where you got a chance to actually make the law, because so many of the laws in the disability field weren't really defined with case law. So you had a chance to be creative and shape the law as you wanted it to be. So being creative for me was the turning point in going into disability law. For mediation, I had a case that went on for 10 years. And although we won the case, even up through the Supreme Court, the person that I was representing ended up dying before the case was over. And so it kind of focused me on mediation at that point as a way to help people make a change, but do it much more quickly than taking 10 years to do it.
So in my world, I kind of had a feeling at some point in high school that I wanted to pursue law as a career. I had relatives that had practiced law. I was in speech and debate. I knew I had some gifts for oral argument, and I was intrigued by doing it professionally. When I got to the point of being in law school and I was trying to think about what kind of different lawyer I might want to be, I, unlike Rachel, decided that I wanted to go onto the civil side of law and not the criminal side of law. And that's usually one decision tree that people make is, do they want to go into the civil side of practice, or do they want to go into the criminal law side of practice? Once I decided that I wanted to be in the civil side, usually another demarcation point is whether people want to be involved in family law cases or not. Ultimately, I felt like I did not want to be a family law lawyer, so I struck that off of my list and looked at other things. Then the next kind of decision tree for me was, did I want to go to court, or did I want to be a drafting lawyer and work business deals and things outside of court? For me, with my oral advocacy skills and speech and debate and other things, I kind of felt like I wanted to be a trial lawyer. So I started heading down that way. And then from there, how I got into specifically business, real estate, and wills and probate. The first job that I had out of law school was with a firm that represented some of George Mitchell's companies here in the Woodlands. And the very first case that I worked on, the very first day on the job, was for one of the divisions of that company that was involved in the development of the Woodlands. And so it was a real estate case. And so I started working on real estate on my very first job. And 27 years later, there has not been a time in that 27 years when I haven't represented in some form or fashion the developer of the Woodlands. So that's been pretty cool and a pretty neat way of getting into that practice. The wills and probate, the dead people stuff, that came out of some family and life experiences where I saw how important it was for people to have wills and how much better having a will or a trust is when someone passes away and they're grieving, to help get their wishes taken care of and make sure that the people in their life are taken care of the way that they want to. And so that came out of my desire to help people with my degree. And not that I don't in the other things that I do, but it was a particular calling that I had. And so I added in the wills, trusts, and probate practice. And then the civil trial law were just other things that I built across the course of 27 years. So I don't know, there are a ton of different things that you can do as a lawyer. And my pathway could have very easily gone into insurance law as a civil trial lawyer, or could have gone into all kinds of different civil trial law fields. But I ended up in business, real estate, and dead people.
So I did speech and debate as well, but I will say my undergrad degree was in mass communications, just because the advice was given, like, well, what if you don't make it into law school? You want something that is like an actual practice or a degree that you can go get a job with. I have some regrets about that, just because I wanted to do more political science. And I am, fairly involved in the political arena. It's, you know what I mean? And so it's one of those things, looking back, one of those life decisions. If you know you're going to go to law school, do what makes you happy, and do what, because you really can take those skills and strengths about what you're passionate about and then apply it to a law degree into any different sector. I will say
Rachel,
also.
Yes, so Rachel, so I was the political science, major. But I was worried about that whole JOB thing just in case, which is why I added on the economics degree so I could take business school classes. So I did have a fallback, because political science, interesting, get a job world. But economics and with the business school degree, I knew I could get a job somewhere if the whole law thing didn't work out for me.
Yeah. Everyone here also has the idea that if you're a lawyer, you make a lot of money, right? That was like part of the motivation. Like, we're not gonna lie, I'm not gonna lie there. One of my first jobs was with a personal injury law firm, and we're talking a lot of money, you know. But what I enjoyed about those cases was being passionate about the people, you know, like the victims, like, oh my God, they did surgery on her nose and now literally her face is mutilated for the rest of her life, you know, like that sort of thing. And so it really is the passion for and that's why I really, really care about advocating for my victims as a prosecutor. So that's kind of what launched me into my career. And then in law school, I mean, I got A's in criminal law. So it's like you can really see your strengths and weaknesses and what you struggle with naturally versus, you know, what you tend to gravitate towards and what you naturally just have a knack for, honestly. So that's kind of what led me to where I am.
So my path, kind of similar, kind of different. If you would have told me when I was your age that I would be where I am and that I'd be doing litigation or anything like this, probably would have laughed at you because there's no way I would have ever seen myself doing this. Unlike James and Rachel, I didn't know I was going to be a lawyer. I was very far from it. I didn't do debate or like mock trial. I have no one in my family or close to me that's an attorney. So I had no frame of reference whatsoever. I wanted to go into like event coordinating. I wanted to do public relations, which is why I studied communication. And similar to Rachel, my first day of communication class, Com 101 at Texas A&M, they ask you what you want to do with your degree. And about 95% of my class wanted to do event coordinating and public relations. And so I said, oh, it's time to find something else. Mm-hmm. So, you know, my path is really, since college and throughout my career, it's been exploring different things and seeing what I like and what I don't like. I didn't like business math, so I took a logic class, and logic and analysis is part and parcel for what you do in the law. And I excelled at logic, and I said, okay, I like this. I'm good at this. What can I do with that? I really enjoyed public speaking. I really enjoyed researching and writing. And so, you know, when I put all of those things started coming together for me in college, and I said, I'm going to just look into law school as one of my options. And it felt right. I took the LSAT, and so I applied to law school. When I started law school, I thought I wanted to go into public health, work for a hospital, work for public health systems, which is why I was in Houston, because Houston has an amazing school. U of H has really great programs for that. Started looking into that, knew it wasn't a good fit for me. I needed a job. And so I was a research assistant for a professor at the University of Houston. And I started working in this field called consumer law. And, you know, before you work in it, you don't know anything about these things. When I say those to you now, but what that is I'm helping people with credit card debt or with divorces, or they move and they hire a moving company, and the moving company takes off with all of their possessions. You know, they buy a bad car, they have issues with their mortgage company or a bank. Those are consumer issues, issues that people on a day-to-day basis face. And I found myself loving that because it's practical, and I was helping people, like I could help people find solutions. And really that's why I got into law. And that's what I do. That's the core of what I do each day. I help people solve problems and find solutions. And so consumer law did that. And that opened a door to this area called bankruptcy. And I found that I really liked bankruptcy. That's when, you know, people or companies go into bankruptcy when they have more debt than they have money and they can't pay their bills. So you can end up going to bankruptcy court. I found that very interesting. And over the course of the first few years of my career, I ended up with cases more and more in court. And I was in front of judges, and I was writing and, you know, submitting motions and pleadings to courts. And I found myself just really passionate about that and using those as tools that were just a natural fit for me. And I realized, oh, I really like litigation. And, you know, I've never turned away any type of work. So with that, I have learned business law and how to help businesses and companies meet goals and, deal with issues and disputes. And that, and I've practiced more and more litigation. And so over the years, by opening myself up to new things and just exploring different areas of what I can do with the law and where my strengths are, I've kind of developed this practice that fits for me and that's fulfilling for me. So it's difficult to say that, you can have a picture of what you want and then that's what you end up doing. It's you really have to go out there and explore all the options. There's just so much to do with the law and in the law.
Mhm.
Two other practices that I have that you don't find on my website and that I don't advertise that I do, but I've handled a number of cases in that I never really thought that I would do, but I handle water law cases, and I also handle election law cases. Not Donald Trump election law cases, but election law and election contest cases. I've successfully tried 4 different election contest cases.
I don't know about the rest of you, but I always found law to be like a way to have people pay me to learn. Because I've always been a good student, I enjoyed learning. And when I was trying to think about what I could do for the rest of my life, I was trying to think, what can I do that will help me grow and change and, is not the same every day. And I can tell you for certain, for me, law has never been dull because it does constantly evolve. I get paid to do research in fields that I'm not necessarily an expert in, but can become an expert in. And it goes from one thing to another. And that's the beauty of law or a law-related field, I think, to me.
Just yesterday, I was having to relearn some grammar, Elaine, in the case that we're working on resolving today.
Mhm.
There was a will that left certain assets to my issue and charities, and issue meaning kids or descendants. And there was a question whether the grammatical my also applied across to charities or not in the construction and interpretation of the language. And you would be amazed or not amazed that 2 different times the Texas Supreme Court has issued opinions talking about when an adjective modifies all of the nouns in a string of nouns following it or not. And so has our Houston First Court of Appeals. And so it is amazing. Yes, today some of the resolution of my case turns on relearning my grammar.
Wow.
Great, thank you guys. Okay, the students that are here, do you guys have a question that you would like to ask? Not that I'm putting you on the spot, but I kind of am because you can't hide in this panel. If you do, just feel free to unmute. I have a list that I can work with, but I want to give you guys a chance to learn from them and ask your questions.
Hey, I have a question. So I know you all talk about how you went into different fields in the law, but I was just wondering, you already talked about it a little bit, but like, does it really influence like the undergrad major? I know like Mr. Stillwell, you talk about the business aspect of that. I'm like, how diverse can you go on the undergrad, or does it have to be like something? Would you advise it to be like more related to law?
So Martin, my answer to that would be for 90% or more kinds of law practice, you can have any degree that you want to. You can be a theater major, you can be a music major, you can study athletic training, you can do anything that you want to do, art, history. The sky's the limit for 90% and maybe even a little bit higher than that of law jobs. There are a couple of specific law fields where they want you to have a scientific or technical undergraduate in order to practice in it. And those are generally intellectual property, which is like trademark and copyright and patents law areas. That's one that I know of that it's very difficult, if you even can at all, to practice in if you don't have a scientific or technical undergraduate in. But anybody else on the panel, any other
Yeah.
specific law that you need something for?
I have like practical recommendations like James did. If you can get a minor in business or something like that, you know, if you're comfortable with that, I'd recommend it. He's right. You can get any degree. Here's a secret that they're probably not going to tell you. If you go to law school, they're going to unteach you how you learn, and they're going to teach you how to think like an attorney. So
Okay.
anything you do in undergrad is, in my opinion, is practical in the sense of you need to skill build. You need to find out who you are. What are you passionate about? How do you like to spend your time, and how do you work and interact? And how can you make good grades? Find a degree where you can make good grades so you can get into a good law school. But when you get to law school, they're gonna brainwash you. There's not much expectation that you know how to think like an attorney before you get to law school.
Okay, great.
And
Thank you.
there are core skills, Martin, that help. And I think you've heard everybody on this panel talk about those things like public speaking, writing
Yeah.
is very important as an attorney, critical thinking, so philosophy classes, logic classes, things that you can take as electives. You don't necessarily have to major in them, but anything that you can do, even as a volunteer. Toastmasters, a lot of attorneys go into Toastmasters just to learn the speaking skills, those types of things, debate. So I agree with what the other panelists have said about most not requiring a specific degree, but anything that you do will help you.
I'm going
Okay.
to add 2 more skills to Elaine's list, and she's right on the mark on all of those. I probably spend 75% of my time reading and writing. Reading and writing skills are essential skills for almost any field or practice of law. And then the other thing that I would add in besides reading and writing is, I guess I would call it cooperative or teamwork skills. Not every lawyer works on a team. Not every lawyer works in a cooperative sense. But I have found that that having good team skills work very well in my practice of law.
All right. Thank you. Thank you guys for your answers.
Great, thank you for your question. Kristen or Rachel, do you guys have a skill that you recommend that you would add differently than those? That's one of our questions that we normally ask. If not, that's okay. I just wanted to give you a chance if you have a skill that is something that they could start working on to use now and for the future.
There's one that I always like to mention, and it kind of piggybacks on something James said, writing. Writing doesn't just mean your ability to write and to put something on paper. I took a technical editing class in college, and what technical editing is, how do you present your words and put them in a format? Like, how do you write an email properly? How do you write a paper? You know, how is your spacing? How does it look? It's like a presentation. What you may not realize at this point is there's etiquette and there's rules to writing an email, you know, to different audiences, to a court, to an opposing party, to any of your clients. And I think that that's an often underestimated or assumed skill that people have that really takes a lot of building that you need. Other professions that I've seen they say that they do writing and that they write a lot. It's, you know, like engineers and doctors, they write, but it's very technical and it's not very polished. You're not presenting it to an audience normally. And in law, you're presenting your work to an audience. So with what James said, and you need reading and writing skills, writing includes an understanding of how to properly write in in a Word document or in, you know, different types of formats, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Rachel, anything you would throw in there?
I mean, I think y'all have covered it all. It really is one of those, for example, my husband does oil and gas law, and he actually does a ton of math. Just, I mean, it blows my mind the amount of math he does. So it really is one of those things where if you have, like, if there is something that you naturally are inclined to, I feel like there is a place for you in the law.
Mhm.
And if you want to focus and harness that, and I think Kristen made a really good point about make sure you get a degree where you can get good grades. While it is somewhat easy now to get into law school, I guess, are what the articles are saying, there's a need for students, I guess, is what the law schools are saying. But to get into the good schools where you will get those good jobs then, I mean, it really matters your LSAT score, which is the test you take in order to get into law school. And you'll take that about your junior year of college, which my philosophy classes helped me so much with the LSAT because it really is just logic games and reasoning. And it really goes against what your knee-jerk reaction would be if someone asks you a question, what's the answer? It's a certain way of thinking to then get to the conclusion that you get. And so philosophy would absolutely help you with a high LSAT score. And then, yeah, if you get a major where you can get good grades, I mean, the sky's the limit, then you can really get into some excellent schools that will then, you know, you're already launching your career even in undergrad, if that makes sense.
Very
And
good.
I'd like to throw in a word for conflict resolution training or mediation. Not only is it my background, but as a lawyer, you come into contact with people who are in conflict all of the time. And if you know about people's conflict styles, how to address it, how to work in a team setting like James was talking about, learning active listening skills, open-ended questions, things that will help you in trial practice. You can learn those through mediation training. And as it just happens, we're going to be doing a 2-day mediation training for all of the EfTA interns this summer, which will assist you in learning the fundamentals of these skills. But a lot of the law schools, the medical schools, any type of school are now requiring mediation training because they realize how important it is, not only that the person can get along in a work setting and can resolve conflict on their own, but also so that they can interact successfully with people who are in conflict.
I teach every new lawyer that comes into my law firm that it is critically important to understand how to disagree without being disagreeable. And I wish more lawyers actually had that as a good skill.
Mhm.
As a society, we have gotten worse and worse and worse about
Mhm.
knowing how to disagree without being disagreeable.
Exactly.
And I'll just continue the plug for the peer mediation. It will be July 7th and July 11th from 9 to 4. We'll be at the Lone Star College campus. And this is our 3rd year. This is our 1st year doing it in person. And many of the students that have gone through the program either went back their senior year and started a peer mediation group, or they're starting to use it within their college. So if that's 3 of you, if that's something that you're interested in, you can find those details to sign up. But every student, we've had about 63 go through it, and they have all loved it. So We also, I just on the last question, that we have a volunteer that wasn't able to join this today, but he is an in-house attorney at Chevron Phillips Chemical Company, and he had a chemical engineering undergrad. So there, he started there, and then later on went to law school, just because that he found that kind of niche. So that's another example. So I know we have a lot of students that are interested in that STEM world, and so just know that a lot of in-house hospitals, engineering plants, whatever it may be, probably have their own. You guys can probably speak to it better than I can. I'm just going based off of what other panelists have said. So that's another route that you guys can always think about if you're interested in certain fields that it's not being in the law firm. So just to keep your open mind, just make that plug. So we talk about law school, we talk about the LSAT and kind of how demanding. I mean, I have friends that went through law school as a single person and then as married, and the time demand that it is in the reading and the writing and the classes and things like that. How did you guys stay motivated as you went through the classes? If you went that path, you do 4 years of an undergrad and then you go right into law school. Some of you probably can be burnt out by with school at that point. So what was your motivation to kind of stay strong and continue through those classes and graduate, and that be your end point?
Here. So I went to the University of Texas Law School, and there can be a grand debate about what is the best law school in the state of Texas, but I would say among the rankings, you're going to see University of Texas at the top of the list most of the time. And it is very difficult to get into. You have to have stellar undergraduate grades, and you have to be able to test well, or at least get a good score on the test. The thing that I wasn't prepared for and didn't understand when I went to UT was that I was going to be in the exact same classes as 100 other people that all had the same credentials as me. I was able to do some skating through high school. Didn't really find undergraduate to be all that hard. I was always a pretty good fish in a small pond. And then when I got to UT Law School, all of a sudden everybody around me had the same academics and same competitive spirit and things that I had. And all of a sudden, and my 1L or freshman law school classes were all graded on the curve. And so it didn't matter if you mastered 95% of the material or not. If everybody mastered 95% of the material, it was all about the 5%. And so all of a sudden, I found myself in a hyper competitive academic world that I had never been in before. Law school also, classes are different. Most of my first year in law school classes were taught by the Socratic method, which is also known as professors picking on students. They would have their 2 or 3 students of the day, and they would teach the entire class of the day by asking those students questions about the material for the day. And you never knew when you were going to get called on or not. And the fear of looking like an idiot around your surrounding classmates was a very strong and ongoing thing for me. And I'm smart, and I still found plenty of motivation in making sure that I was on top of my game all of the time. That's not the best motivation for staying motivated, but it was certainly something that made me, when I didn't want to do my homework, when I didn't want to read the cases, I could just, see the picture of one of my professors popping into my head, calling my name out, and I'd be like, I don't know. And that's never a good feeling. So that was some of what got me motivated. And I did go straight through, unlike Elaine. Elaine was talking about having a job in between undergraduate and law school. I was straight through 4 years high school, 4 years undergraduate, 3 years law school, first law job. I had jobs the entire way through. But yeah, so I mean, I was joking when I said fear, but I'm also not joking.
Absolutely. Yeah. The Socratic method is terrifying. And so you made sure you read your homework versus undergrad. You study for the test, absolutely, but maybe not class every day, if that makes sense. But then law school is set up a little bit differently. Also, you are in something called your section, and you stay in your section and you take all of the same classes with the same people. And so there's this sort of like bonding that goes on. And you just like kind of everyone understands that we don't have any other option. It's this like weird microcosm, this like mini universe where you're like, well, yeah, of course, like we're going to spend all day in a library reading and then we're going to go to class. And like, it's just this kind of a support system, but you're also competing with them. It's just a weird makeup where, I mean, you kind of just don't have an option but to study and to be involved and to do all of the work for your classes. And then you get trauma bonded, and it's an interesting experience. But yeah, that was my thought was, you don't have an option, and the outside world and your old friends and even family events and stuff, you don't have as much time for that. You are in your own universe of law school, which is both incredibly fun, but also a lot of work also.
And I will also say that the Socratic method is not just for picking on students. When I go to court, judges ask me questions. When I have clients sitting in my office, clients ask me questions, and they're expecting me to respond to them with intelligent answers. And so there is a huge amount of my practice that deals with people asking me questions all the time, and it's my job to respond to them. So in that sense, it was good training, because that's not the way I used to think.
I think one thing that kept me very motivated, because it's not the complexity of the material that's difficult, it's the volume of the material that you have to deal with, because you can have 1,000 pages to read in each class. So you're constantly reading and you're constantly trying to stay up with things. In the first year, like Rachel was talking about, you're in a section and you're assigned the classes. Some will interest you, some won't. Some teachers, you'll like their style, some you can't wait to get out of. But what I did is I used my summers for internships, and like starting with the first summer after first year, I interned with the head judge for the Southern District of Texas. So I was able to actually take what I was learning in my contract class and put it to practical use in writing opinions for the judge. So that made it really interesting, and it made me understand I need to learn more. This is going to be a constant adding on to what I know. So by doing these internships at different places during the summer, it helped me kind of explore how what I was doing in the classes could be put to use. So for me, that worked to keep me going.
Elaine, after my second year of law school, I had a job, one of those summer internships, where I walked in and my boss said on the first day, I had a lawyer leave the firm last week and I don't have another one coming in until August. So this summer you're a lawyer. And I'm like,
no.
I'm not. He's like, yep, this summer you're a lawyer and we're going to get you a bar card, which is a mini license. It allows you to practice law under the supervision of another attorney. And so after finishing 2 years of law school, but not the third, and not studying for my bar exam, I got a bar card that allowed me to practice law. And that summer I was a lawyer. And so there was both a fear factor in that, but also a hugely motivating factor, because by the time I got done with that summer, I'm like, yes, I can do this.
Yeah.
So what are some lessons or takeaways that you guys have learned throughout different cases that maybe are different situations that took a different route or didn't go the way you planned, that you can, maybe that can apply to students as they go throughout college or enter law school, enter into career, that they can kind of keep in back pockets to remember? Not remember your failure, but like remember a lesson that you've learned.
Giving somebody else a chance to speak, because I've got a ton of them. Okay, I'll just start. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Chris.
No, go ahead, James, go with it.
Okay, number one, have a will. Yep, have a will. That's a very, very practical lesson. Once you turn 18, get a will. That's a great one. So practical lesson number two, this is for me as a lawyer, this was a life balance type of a thing. Two lessons that I had to figure out early on and have done very well for me over the course of my time as an attorney. Number one, there's always more law tomorrow. Most of my cases take a year to 3 years, depending on the kind of case it is and how long it lasts and how far up the appellate world it goes or doesn't go. Although there are discrete deadlines and hard and fast dates that have to be met, if I wanted to keep going until everything was done, I would never leave the office ever. I always have stuff that is not finished. I always have more client needs to meet. I always have more research I could do, more reading I could do, more editing and polishing of the paperwork that I do. There is always more. And I had to learn early on that unless I recognize that there is more law tomorrow, it will eat me up today. And so there comes to a point where you have to be satisfied with the level of completion that you have, recognizing, deadlines and amount of time that you have to make things better tomorrow or the day after that or the day after that. So there's always more law tomorrow was one of them. And then the other thing that kind of went hand in hand for me with that is my clients' problems are my clients' problems. They're not my problems. I have an immense amount of empathy for my clients, and I really always want the best for all of them. But ultimately, my clients' problems are my clients' problems. They're not my problems. One of the things about the law profession is that everybody that comes to you has a problem. And if you allow their problems to become your problems, then you get very heaped upon in life. There are many lawyers that never figure out how to deal with that and suffer from depression or substance abuse. Some commit suicide and other things. And so in order to keep a healthy mental wellness and life balance for me, I had to learn how to have great empathy for the things that my clients were going through without owning them for myself. So that's another one of those that I had to learn along the way.
Since I'm on the criminal side of things, let me just throw out, some criminal attorney advice, which I'm like, I don't know if this is directly answering your question, sorry. But I will say, since James, you were like, get a will. Mine would be, do not talk to the cops without an attorney present. Please do not. You have a right to an attorney, even if you're not guilty of whatever they're asking you about. That's fine. Explain that to your attorney first, and they will help you communicate that to the police officers. We do not, absolutely, you have a right to an attorney, even if you can't afford one. We all have seen that in the TV shows. So many times information gets misconstrued, or as a prosecutor, I get a lot of my evidence from what someone tells me. And so just for your, I mean, that is such important advice. You need to know your rights, and you need to know one of your rights is a right to an attorney. So no matter what, if you ever get involved on the criminal side of things, remember that and ask for it before you ever say one word. So yeah, that's my advice.
I mean, I think James and Rachel hit on the big ones. You know, one that James talked about at the end was, you know, your client's problems are not your own. That's one of the very biggest, you know, obstacles or burdens that attorneys take on for sure. Some that I have, and I'm not going to get into these in depth, but you're going to fail. You will fail for sure. What's important is how you pick yourself up and move on. So don't think that you're going to be perfect and it'll all be good, or that if something happens that's the end of your career. You know, you're going to have really good moments. You're going to have times when you succeed, and then there'll be failures, and you learn from it and you move on, because it's just a job. And at the end of the day, you're a person first, and that's much more important.
Come on, Kristen, I win all of my cases, all of them, everyone, all the
So
time.
for the 99.9% of us who aren't James, or
No,
for me,
I
I can
not.
speak for myself.
No, I do not win all of my cases, no.
Sometimes I fail.
Somebody had told us that in law school, that you will lose cases when you're first starting out that you're absolutely positive there's no way you can lose. And later you will win cases that you think that there is absolutely no way you could win them. And there's really no way to tell with 100% certainty. So all you can do is your best, and within a balanced life, of course. And I think the other thing that I think people don't realize in law school is that you may change jobs or different types of career opportunities many times throughout. And each firm has its own personality. Each company has its own personality. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're not as fulfilled or happy with it as you think you should be, don't be afraid to try something different, because you can grow and you can evolve within the legal field.
Okay, I have to step out real fast, but I'll jump right back.
We're about to wrap, so thank you.
I'll come back for that last question and get it at the tail end.
Okay. All right. I'll do my plug that this is falling into a good time that I've been watching Suits, the TV show. And Harvey Specter says he always wins, but you always think about, like, I feel like every time we do this, I'm watching some law show whenever we do this panel. So I want to, students, there's only a few, do you have any questions before I wrap with our final question?
No, not for me. I think everything was really interesting, and I think I learned a lot from this panel. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Yes, so I do encourage you guys to sign up for that peer mediation training if you are available those 2 days. It's again at the Lone Star College, and I'll send details out next week. But for our last question to wrap up, what is that one piece of advice you would go back and tell your 18-year-old self? Rachel, I'm sorry. Your eyes.
I mean, so much. I mean, we covered some of it, but have fun in college and law school, because the grind as an adult is real. It's very real. And while I can now afford and go on wonderful vacations, it's only, part of the year, the day in, the day out. Like, I really miss those times when I was in college and it wasn't as stressful, or, the burdens of life were not as heavy as they are now. So, I mean, just really enjoy college, and law school for that matter.
So my advice is know that you're going to hit speed bumps along the way. But when you do, you are good enough, you are smart enough, you are strong enough, and you are not alone. There will be other people out there that if you ask, they will help you get over those speed bumps.
One I have is put yourself out there, whether you go into law or not, whether you're introverted or extroverted, whether you like people or you think you know, or if you think you have it all figured out or not. Network, meet people, join organizations, join groups, get a job, volunteer, just get out there, go and experience different things. You know, that's really the best way to figure out who you are and, you know, what path is right for you, what you want to do. So just put yourself out there, network.
Mhm. And I think I would add, just don't be so hard on yourself. You don't have to have all the answers now. That's the beauty of being young and starting out. Nobody expects you to be perfect at that point. They know you won't be. So enjoy it. Give yourself a little grace for the mistakes that you make, and just be open to the opportunities, because opportunities are going to present themselves in ways you would never think possible. Things that you couldn't plan on, no matter how much you tried to plan. So just relax and enjoy it.
Those are great. Thank you, guys. So I want to, for smaller, get you guys back to wrap up your day. Students, can you help me thank, I know we can't see you, but can you help me thank our panelists for joining us this afternoon? We have students who've got our human resources panel in the morning at 9 o'clock, where you can come and learn about what are the companies looking for when they're hiring and interviewing and all the things. And then tomorrow afternoon, we have our environmental and our life science panel. So thank you guys for coming this afternoon. Panel, thank you guys for joining us and sharing your insights and your wisdom and the things that you guys have learned along the way. We appreciate your commitment and your involvement with the EfTA each year, and hope that you have a great rest of your afternoon. So thank you guys.
I'm back to mediation. See you.
Thank you very much.
Bye guys. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.